The combat training facility on Omega Crossing hummed with the kind of energy that made smart people nervous. 60 species, give or take, all crammed into one station trying to prove their military prowess didn't translate to catastrophically bad at sharing space. Today's entertainment? Lex, a mid-rank human officer who'd somehow gotten volunteered for the intergalactic military exchange program, squaring off against Instructor Kumal. Kumal was Zelthorian. That meant approximately 6.5 feet of crystalline-plated muscle, reflexes that made Cobra strikes seem leisurely, and a reputation for being unbeatable in close combat. He'd trained thousands of warriors across dozens of species. His signature move, a three-point strike combination that exploited gaps in opponent defenses, had never been successfully countered. Never. Lex circled him on the training mat, her boots squeaking against the rubberized surface. Sweat plastered her dark hair to her forehead. She'd been at this for 30 minutes, and Kumal hadn't even broken a sweat. Typical. Around the perimeter, observers from a dozen species watched with varying degrees of interest. Some took notes on holographic tablets. Others whispered among themselves, probably placing bets. Humans didn't have the best win record in these exchanges. They were decent, scrappy, adaptable, annoyingly persistent, but rarely exceptional. Kumal moved with that fluid grace his species was known for, his secondary arms tucked against his torso in the neutral position. His primary eyes tracked Lex, while his tertiary eyes monitored the environment. Standard Zelthorian combat awareness. "Your stance is improving," Kumal said, his voice like rocks tumbling in a metal drum. "But you telegraph your intentions. I can read your next move in the tension of your shoulders." "Yeah, well," Lex muttered, adjusting her footing. "Not all of us have 4 sets of eyes." "You have 2. Learn to use them properly." Helpful, real helpful. They'd been running basic drills for weeks now. Lex had gotten better. She'd stopped landing on her ass every 30 seconds, which felt like progress, but better wasn't the same as good. And good definitely wasn't the same as great. Kumal shifted his weight. Lex tensed. Then something happened. Lex moved. She didn't think about it, didn't see it coming in any conventional sense. Her body simply moved, twisting left and dropping low as if someone had yanked her sideways by an invisible cord. And then Kumal struck. His primary right arm lashed out in the opening sequence of his signature combination, the one that had put countless opponents on the mat. The strike cut through the space where Lex's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. But she wasn't there anymore. The training facility went silent. Kumal froze mid-combination, his arm extended, his crystalline features registering something that might have been shock if Zelthorians did shock. His tertiary eyes swiveled to track Lex's current position, while his primary eyes remained fixed on where she'd been. Lex straightened slowly, her own heart hammering against her ribs. She said eloquently. "Did I?" "You moved before I struck." Kumal's voice carried no inflection, but his posture had shifted into something that might have been defensive alertness. "You moved before I initiated the sequence." What?" A chime sounded overhead. The facility's combat monitoring system, an AI that tracked every movement, every strike, every tactical decision for post-match analysis, announced in its maddeningly calm synthetic voice, "Anomaly detected. Combatant Lex displayed pre-event awareness. Movement initiated 0.3 seconds prior to opponent's muscle tension indicators. Classification: unprecedented. Flagging for review." Now the observers weren't just watching. They were staring. A Peltraxian in the front row dropped his data tablet. A Crixian female made a chittering sound that her species used to express profound confusion. Someone from the back, Lex couldn't see who, whispered something that got passed around the room like a particularly juicy piece of gossip. Kumal lowered his arms slowly, all four of them. "How did you know?" "I didn't," Lex said, and that was the truth. I felt like I needed to move, like something was about to happen." "Nothing was happening. I hadn't committed to the strike yet." "I know that now, but—" Lex gestured helplessly. "I can't explain it. It was instinct. Instinct reacts to stimuli. There was no stimulus." "Well, clearly there was something, because I'm not standing here with a concussion." Kumal's mandibles clicked together in a gesture Lex had learned meant he was thinking hard about something. After a long moment, he said, "We should run the sequence again." "You want to try to hit me again?" "I want to understand what just occurred." "Fair enough." They reset positions. Lex tried to calm her breathing, tried to find that state of mind she'd been in before the first attempt. Relaxed, but alert, not thinking too hard about anything. Kumal circled. Lex mirrored him. This time when he moved, Lex saw it coming the normal way, registered the shift in his weight, the micro-adjustment in his stance. She blocked, barely, and took a light tap to the shoulder that still stung through her training armor. "Normal response time," the monitoring AI announced, sounding almost disappointed. They tried again, and again, and again. On the sixth attempt, it happened once more. Lex moved, jerked right this time, dropping into a roll, and Kumal's strike cut through empty air. The monitoring AI chimed its alert. Pre-event awareness detected. Movement initiated 0.4 seconds prior to opponent action. "Okay," Lex said from her position on the mat. "That's officially weird." Kumal stood perfectly still, all four arms spread in a posture that Lex had learned meant intense concentration. "You did it again?" "Yeah, I noticed." "How?" "If I knew that, I'd be way less freaked out right now." A commotion at the facility entrance interrupted them. Commander Otho Lin swept in, his Peltraxian bulk draped in official station regalia, followed by a cluster of junior officers and analysts. Peltraxians looked like someone had crossed a walrus with a businessman and given the result a really expensive suit. Otho Lin's whiskers twitched with bureaucratic concern. "Training exercise suspended," he announced, his voice carrying the particular tone of someone who dealt with problems by creating committees. "All footage to be reviewed immediately. Lex, you're to report to medical evaluation. Kumal, incident report on my desk within the hour." "Commander," Kumal began, "I don't believe this is a medical—" "0.3 seconds, Instructor. She moved 0.3 seconds before you did. That's not normal. That's not possible. And on this station, impossible things get investigated before they become catastrophic things." Hard to argue with that logic, really. The observers were already filing out, still whispering among themselves. Lex caught fragments of conversation in a dozen languages. Human anomaly, temporal distortion, psychic mutation, equipment malfunction. None of those options sounded great, honestly. Kess showed up 20 minutes later, while Lex was still sitting in the training facility, drinking water and trying to process what had happened. Dr. Kess, human, mid-40s, with the kind of perpetually tired eyes that suggested he'd seen way too much weird stuff to be properly impressed anymore, carried a medical scanner and an expression of profound skepticism. "So," he said by way of greeting, "you're the impossible human of the week. Is that a regular position? Because I didn't apply for it." "There's always an impossible human. Last month it was someone whose blood chemistry somehow processed Crixian toxins into vitamins. Month before that, a guy who could hear electromagnetic fields. Kess waved his scanner at her. We're a species that refuses to stay inside the statistical norms. Is that bad? It's inconvenient for people like me who have to write reports explaining it. He studied his scanner readouts, frowning. Your vitals are normal. Neural activity is normal. Reaction time falls within expected human parameters. You're aggressively, boringly normal. Except for the whole seeing the future thing. You didn't see the future. You predicted an immediate event. There's a difference. Kess made a note on his tablet. Although how you predicted it before it started happening is the interesting question. You believe me? I believe the monitoring system. Those things don't hallucinate. If it says you moved before Kumal did, then you moved before Kumal did. He paused. I just don't know why yet. So what happens now? Now you get to be my science project. Kess smiled, but it wasn't entirely comforting. We're going to run tests, lots of tests, and we're going to figure out what makes you special. What if I don't want to be special? Should have thought of that before you dodged the instructor's strike before he moved. Kess packed up his scanner. Welcome to being interesting, Lex. It's going to be a really annoying experience for both of us. By evening, the entire station knew. That was the thing about military installations. Gossip traveled faster than official communications. Lex couldn't walk 10 feet without someone staring at her. Some species regarded her with curiosity, others with suspicion, a few with what might have been fear. She found Kumal in one of the observation lounges, watching the station's traffic patterns through the massive viewport. Ships came and went, hauling personnel and supplies across this sector of negotiated space. I didn't mean to embarrass you, Lex said. Kumal's tertiary eyes swiveled to regard her, while his primary eyes remained fixed on the viewport. I am not embarrassed. I am intrigued. Really? Because if someone dodged my best move before I even threw it, I'd be pretty pissed. Perhaps that is why you are still learning and I am an instructor. His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. I have trained for 60 cycles. I have studied combat across 40 species. I thought I understood the limits of possibility. He turned to face her fully. You have shown me I was wrong. Yeah, well, I'd rather not be a living impossibility if it's all the same to you. Too late for that now. Through the viewport, another ship docked, this one bearing Zelthorian Confederacy markings. Kumal noticed it, and something in his posture shifted, became more guarded. What? Lex asked. Nothing. Perhaps nothing. But he didn't sound convinced. When I submit my report, it will reach Zelthorian High Command. They will want to understand what occurred. So, you'll tell them it was a fluke. Will I? Kumal's expression was unreadable. Because, from where I stood, it did not feel like a fluke. It felt like you knew exactly what I was going to do before I knew it myself. That's impossible. Yes, Kumal agreed. It is. That is what concerns me. He left her there, watching the ships come and go, wondering what she'd started. In the command center, Otholin reviewed the combat footage for the 12th time. 0.3 seconds. It shouldn't have been possible. His analysts had ruled out equipment malfunction, ruled out optical illusions, ruled out everything that made sense, which left only options that didn't make sense. Get me a full background on this human, he told his staff, and someone contact the Exchange Program Oversight Committee. We may have a situation. What kind of situation, Commander? Otholin watched Lex move on the screen, that impossible preemptive dodge that defied causality. The kind that makes politicians nervous, and turns routine training, exercises into diplomatic incidents. Sir, just make the calls. Somewhere in the station's lower levels, in a maintenance corridor that saw little foot traffic, two figures met in the shadows. One was Crixian, one was Peltraxian. Neither wore identifying marks. You saw the footage? Everyone saw the footage. This changes things. Perhaps, or perhaps the human got lucky. Lucky! She moved before. I know what she did. The Peltraxian's whiskers twitched with agitation. The question is what we do about it. We stick to the plan, now more than ever. And if she really can predict, then we'll have to be unpredictable. They parted without another word, disappearing into different corridors, leaving only darkness behind. In her quarters, Lex lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind kept replaying the moment over and over. That feeling of knowing something was about to happen. Not seeing it, not hearing it, just knowing it the way you know your own heartbeat. What had Kumal said? She'd moved before he'd committed to the strike, before the action started. How was that possible? And more importantly, why did it feel so natural when it happened? Sleep didn't come easy that night, and when it did, her dreams were full of movements she hadn't made yet, and strikes that hadn't fallen. Somewhere in all that darkness and uncertainty, something new was waking up. Something human. Something that 60 species training together had never seen before. Something that was about to make Omega Crossing a lot more interesting. Or possibly a lot more dangerous. Hard to say which. Probably both. Morning came with a summons to the research wing. Kes had apparently decided that lots of tests meant start immediately and continue until something makes sense. Lex found him in a lab that smelled like antiseptic and contained more monitoring equipment than seemed strictly necessary. Strip down to your underlayer, Kes said without preamble, gesturing to a medical pod that looked disturbingly coffin-like. We're mapping your neural pathways. Good morning to you, too. Mornings are a social construct. Neural mapping is science. Get in the pod. Lex complied, trying not to think about how much the pod resembled something designed to either heal you or cremate you with no middle ground. Sensors attached to her temples, her spine, her wrists. Cold gel that made her skin crawl. Comfortable? Kes asked. Not even a little bit. Perfect. Now I'm going to run a series of cognitive tests. Simple stuff. Pattern recognition, reaction timing, predictive modeling. Just respond naturally. The next 2 hours were possibly the most boring yet somehow exhausting experience of her life. Lights flashed. Sequences appeared. Questions came rapid-fire through speakers. Which shape comes next? When will this sound repeat? What pattern do you see? Through it all, monitors hummed and recorded data that probably spelled out her entire personality in cold, mathematical terms. When Kes finally powered down the equipment, he looked more confused than when they'd started. So? Lex asked, peeling sensors off her skin. So you're completely, aggressively normal. Kes scrolled through data on his tablet. Neural processing speed is average for human baseline. Pattern recognition falls within expected parameters. Cognitive response time is actually slightly slower than military average. Thanks. Really feeling special now? That's the problem. You shouldn't be able to do what you did yesterday. Nothing in your neurology suggests enhanced predictive capability. He sat back, rubbing his temples. Unless we're measuring the wrong things. What's that supposed to mean? It means I need to test you differently. Stop looking for anomalies in your hardware and start looking at your software. Kes stood abruptly. Meet me in Combat Sim Room 3 in 20 minutes. Bring your training gear. Combat Sim Room 3 was smaller than the main facility, designed for solo training sessions. Holographic projectors lined the walls, capable of generating everything from basic targets to full combat scenarios. Kess was already there when Lex arrived, programming something into the control interface. "We're going to run scenarios," he explained. "Escalating complexity, increasing unpredictability. I want to see if you can replicate yesterday's performance under controlled conditions. And if I can't, then it was a fluke, and we all move on with our lives." Kess activated the first sequence. But I don't think it was a fluke. The first scenario was basic: holographic opponents attacking from predictable angles. Lex handled it fine, nothing extraordinary. Standard military training responses. Second scenario: faster opponents, less predictable patterns. Lex did well enough, took a few simulated hits, nothing concerning. Third scenario: multiple opponents, randomized attack sequences, environmental hazards. That's when it happened again. An opponent materialized behind her. She hadn't seen it. The program had specifically spawned it outside her visual range, and she moved, dropped and rolled left before the holographic blade completed its swing path. "Hold," Kess called out. The simulation froze. "You did it again!" Lex's heart pounded. The program spawned something behind me. Yes, in a position you couldn't see, with attack timing randomized by the computer. Kess pulled up the telemetry data. "You moved 0.28 seconds before the attack initiated. Explain that." "I can't. I just felt it." "Felt what?" "Like the air was about to get heavy behind me. Like gravity was shifting." Lex struggled for words. "It wasn't anything I saw or heard. It was just there." Kess made notes, his expression thoughtful. "Run it again. Same parameters." They ran it 6 more times. Lex successfully predicted attacks roughly 60% of the time. Not perfect, but way above chance. The predictions only worked when the scenario felt genuinely dangerous, when her body believed the threat was real. "Stress response activation," Kess muttered, more to himself than to Lex. "The ability only manifests under genuine threat perception." "So what is it? Am I psychic? Because that's going to make family reunions really awkward." "You're not psychic. Psychic isn't real. This is something else." Kess pulled up comparative data on his screen. "Tell me, how do you describe what happens right before you move?" "It's like," Lex thought carefully, "like hearing something underwater. Muffled, but you know it's there. Like I'm sensing the shape of what's about to happen before it happens." "The shape?" Kess highlighted something in his data. "Not the details, just the general form." "Yeah, exactly. That's pattern recognition. Hyper-accelerated pattern recognition." Kess pulled up another screen showing comparative neural scans across species. "Your brain is processing environmental microcues faster than your conscious mind can register. Breathing patterns, weight distribution, air pressure changes, sound wavelengths. Your subconscious assembles these fragments into predictive models." "In English? You're not seeing the future. You're calculating it so fast it feels like precognition." Kess grinned, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. "Your brain is turning you into a predictive algorithm." Before Lex could respond, the lab door opened. Helix entered, a mind weaver, which meant roughly humanoid, but with skin that seemed to shift colors based on mood and thoughts that occasionally leaked into nearby telepathic fields. Mind-weavers didn't read minds exactly, but they sensed intentions, emotional states, the general shape of consciousness. "Forgive the intrusion," Kulik said, their voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple vocal cords. "I observed yesterday's incident. I have a theory." "Join the club," Kes said. "Everyone has theories. Mine may interest you." Kulik's moved with that characteristic mind-weaver grace, like they were constantly aware of every particle around them. "Humans are persistence hunters, yes? Your species evolved chasing prey across vast distances." "That's old news," Lex said. "But consider the implications. To hunt successfully, you must predict where prey will go, how it will move, when it will tire. Your ancestors survived because they could model future states based on minimal present information." Hulix's skin shifted to thoughtful purple. "Other species evolved different advantages. Zelthorians have superior reflexes. Crixians have enhanced spatial awareness. Humans have something potentially more powerful: temporal pattern projection." "You're saying humans see through time?" Kes sounded skeptical. "I'm saying humans process time differently. Most species react to now. Humans exist in now, while simultaneously modeling what comes next. Usually, this is subconscious, incremental. But in Lex," Kulik gestured at her, "perhaps the ability has surfaced consciously, become accessible." "Why her specifically?" Lex asked. "Why does any mutation express? Stress? Environment? Genetic lottery?" Kulik's skin flickered with uncertainty patterns. "The question isn't why it's what this means for human potential generally." Kes pulled up more data, his fingers flying across the interface. "I've been reviewing medical records from the exchange program. Subtle things I dismissed before. Humans consistently score higher on predictive tactical modeling than expected. Small margins, nothing dramatic, but statistically significant across hundreds of personnel." "So, I'm not unique?" "You're not unique. You're just the most dramatic expression of a widespread human trait." Kes looked up from his screen. "Every human here probably has trace amounts of this ability. You just won the genetic lottery and got it turned up to 11. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. If it's widespread," Lex said slowly, "and if it's this powerful in me, what happens when people realize all humans might have some version of it?" The room went quiet. Kulik's skin shifted to concerned gray. "That is precisely the question that will concern many species. They'll see it as a threat," Lex said. "Some will see it as an advantage to be studied. Others as a weapon to be controlled. Others still as a danger to be eliminated." Hulix moved toward the door. "I suggest you prepare yourself. News spreads quickly on Omega Crossing, and fear spreads faster." After Kulix left, Kes and Lex sat in silence for a long moment. "So, what do I do?" Lex finally asked. "We document everything. Build a scientific case. Show that this isn't magic or threat, just evolution doing what evolution does." Kes started organizing his data files. "And we hope rational thinking wins out over fear." "Does it usually?" "Not even a little bit." "Great. But sometimes it does. That's why we try." Kes looked at her seriously. "You're not dangerous, Lex. You're just different. We need to make sure everyone understands that distinction. And if they don't, then things get complicated." That night, Lex returned to her quarters to find a message waiting. Official seal of the Zelthorian Confederacy. She opened it with growing dread. The message was brief. "Formal challenge issued to human Lex by Champion Upoket. Undefeated in 200 matches. Combat trial scheduled in 3 planetary rotations. Refusal will be interpreted as admission of illegal enhancement. Your presence is required." Below the text was an image of Upoket. He made Kumal look small. Lex sat on her bunk, staring at the message, and wondered if dodging one strike had just signed her death warrant. News of the challenge spread through Omega Crossing like a hull breach, fast, loud, and potentially catastrophic. By morning, everyone knew. Human officer with impossible reflexes versus Zelthorian champion who'd never lost. The station's rumor, Mill had already escalated it from formal challenge to potential interspecies incident to possible precursor to diplomatic crisis. Lex found Kumal in the main training facility, running through combat forms with an intensity that suggested he was either very focused or very angry. Possibly both. "So," she said, "your people want me dead?" Kumal completed his sequence before responding, his crystalline plates catching the overhead lights. "They want answers. Upoket is their method of obtaining them. By beating me into paste? By testing whether your ability is genuine or fraudulent." Kumal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "If you truly can predict attacks, you should survive. If you cannot, then yesterday was equipment malfunction or deception. That's a pretty high-stakes science experiment. My people value certainty. They don't appreciate anomalies that challenge their understanding of combat superiority." He turned to face her fully. "Upoket has defeated Crixian bladed answers, Peltraxian heavyweights, Mindweaver tacticians. He is undefeated because he is unpredictable. No patterns, no habits, pure adaptive combat intuition." "You're really selling this. You need to understand what you face. This isn't a training exercise. Upoket fights to win." Kumal paused. "However, if you wish, I will train you. 3 rotations isn't much time, but it's something." "Why would you help me?" "Because I want to know if what you did was real, and I prefer to find out while you're still alive." Hard to argue with that reasoning. They started immediately. Kumal pushed her through sequences designed to force her into using the predictive ability consciously. Block and counter drills, environmental awareness exercises, tactical prediction scenarios. It went terribly. The more Lex tried to make the ability work, the less it cooperated. She took hits she should have dodged, missed openings she should have seen. After 2 hours, she was bruised, frustrated, and no closer to understanding how to control whatever was happening in her brain. "Stop thinking," Kumal said, after she'd missed another obvious telegraph. "That's not helpful advice. It's the only advice that matters. When you successfully predicted my strike, were you thinking about prediction?" "No, I just moved." "Then stop trying to think your way into instinct. Your conscious mind is interfering with your subconscious processing." Kumal reset his stance. Zelthorian combat philosophy. The warrior who thinks has already lost. The body knows what the mind hasn't learned yet. "So I should just not think?" "You should trust the part of yourself that exists before thought." Lex tried. She really did. But turning off her brain while someone tried to hit her proved harder than it sounded. Every time she felt that pre-awareness stirring, her conscious mind grabbed it, tried to analyze it, and promptly killed it. By the end of the session, she was exhausted and no more prepared than when they'd started. Kes found her later in the station's observation lounge, staring out at the void and contemplating the various ways she might die in 3 rotations. "You look terrible," he said cheerfully, sitting beside her with 2 drinks, something hot and caffeinated that humans universally agreed made difficult situations marginally less awful. "Thanks. Really needed that." "How's training?" "Training is me discovering that trying to control this ability is like trying to remember how to breathe. The second you think about it, it stops working." Kes sipped his drink thoughtfully. That actually makes sense from a neurological perspective. Your predictive processing happens in preconscious brain regions, parts that evolved before complex thought. When your prefrontal cortex tries to take over, it disrupts the process. So I'm screwed. Not necessarily. You just need to approach it differently. Kes pulled up data on his tablet. I've been reviewing more human records. Found something interesting. Humans who perform best in high-stress situations often report entering a state they describe as flow, or being in the zone. Time seems to slow down. Actions become automatic. Conscious thought fades into the background. That's what athletes talk about. And soldiers, and surgeons, and pilots. Kes highlighted sections of his research. It's a documented psychological state where the prefrontal cortex quiets down and more primitive brain regions take over. That's probably when your predictive ability works best. So, I need to stop trying and just be? Essentially, yes, which is extremely unhelpful advice that's nevertheless accurate. You're terrible at pep talks. I'm a scientist, not a motivational speaker. Kes finished his drink. But for what it's worth, I think you can do this. Your brain already knows how. You just need to get out of its way. On the second rotation, Imix showed up at her quarters. The security officer looked uncomfortable, which on a Crixian meant his antennae kept twitching and his chitinous plates kept shifting colors. "We need to talk," he said, voice clicking with urgency. "Somewhere private." They found a maintenance corridor in a section scheduled for overnight repairs. Empty, quiet, and most importantly, not monitored by station security systems. "Someone's been accessing your files," Imix said without preamble. "Medical records, combat data, personal background. Whoever's doing it knows how to cover their tracks, but they're not perfect." "Who?" "Can't trace it back to individuals yet. But I found something else." Imix pulled up data on a handheld device. "Maintenance requests for the combat arena where you'll fight Upoket. Multiple systems being adjusted. Safety protocols, force field generators, medical response equipment. That sounds normal for a major match." "It would be, except the requests are coming through irregular channels. Not standard procedure." Imix's antennae flattened, a Crixian gesture of serious concern. "I checked the specifications. Someone's reconfiguring the arena's safety systems. To make them better? To disable them. If these modifications go through, the arena won't be in training mode. It'll be lethal." Lex felt something cold settle in her stomach. Someone's trying to kill me. Or discredit you. Or prove humans are too dangerous for the exchange program. Imix closed the device. "Could be any number of groups. Some species fear what you represent. Others want to study you. Others still think humans are a threat to galactic stability. Can you stop it? I can try. But if I expose this conspiracy too early, they'll just adapt. And I can't prove who's behind it yet, just that it's happening." Imix's plates shifted to determined orange. "You need to be careful. Trust no one except people you absolutely know." "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've worked security on this station for 8 cycles. I've seen what fear does to rational beings, turns them into something ugly. If you die in that arena, it won't be justice. It'll be murder, dressed up as procedure." Imix headed toward the corridor exit. "Watch your back, Lex. Someone's already aimed for it." That night, Lex couldn't sleep. She ran scenarios in her head. All the ways the fight could go wrong. All the possibilities for disaster. The more she thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. She found herself back in the training facility at some late hour. The lights dimmed for station night cycle. She expected to be alone. Instead, Kumal was there, moving through forms in the half-darkness. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "Zelthorians require minimal rest. I prefer to train when the facility is empty." He paused mid-sequence. "You should be resting." Resting didn't seem productive. Lex stepped onto the mat. "Can we try something different?" "Such as?" "Stop trying to teach me to fight like a Zelthorian. Let me fight like a human." Kumal's tertiary eyes swiveled to examine her. "Explain." "You said it yourself. Every species has advantages. Zelthorians have superior reflexes and combat intuition. Humans have pattern recognition and persistence. So stop trying to make me faster. Help me be better at what I already do." "Which is?" "Predicting. Planning. Seeing 3 moves ahead instead of reacting to 1. Lex settled into a ready stance. "Come at me like you would in a real fight. Not a training exercise, actual combat. Make me believe it." Kumal considered this, then nodded. "Very well, but understand. If I fight as I truly fight, you will get hurt. I'll get hurt worse if I'm not prepared." "Your death," Kumal said, but there might have been approval in his tone. He came at her like a storm. No warm-up, no telegraphing, just pure Zelthorian combat efficiency. Lex barely got her guard up in time. His strikes came from impossible angles, his secondary arms creating openings, his primary arms exploited. She took hits. Not full force. Kumal wasn't trying to hospitalize her, but enough to sting, enough to hurt. But something was different this time. Lex stopped trying to control the predictive ability, stopped trying to force it. She just moved, trusting her body to do what her mind couldn't figure out. And slowly, incrementally, that underwater feeling returned. That sense of knowing where the next strike would come from before it arrived. She didn't dodge everything, not even close. But she dodged some things, and more importantly, she stopped thinking about dodging and just dodged. The session lasted an hour. By the end, both of them were breathing hard. "Better," Kumal said. "Not good enough yet, but better." "How much better do I need to be?" "Enough to survive 6 minutes. Matches are scheduled for 6-minute rounds. If you can last that long without dying, you win by default. Challengers must achieve victory within the time limit. So I don't need to beat Upoket, just not die for 6 minutes." "Correct. Which may be harder than it sounds." "Everything about this is harder than it sounds." Kumal's mandibles clicked. Definitely amusement this time. "Welcome to combat at the highest levels. It's supposed to be impossible. That's what makes victory meaningful. And if I lose? Then I will speak at your memorial and tell everyone you died bravely." He paused. "But I would prefer you not die. Training is more interesting when students survive." "That's almost touching." "I am capable of sentiment. I simply choose not to waste it on hypotheticals." Kumal headed toward the exit, then paused. "One more thing. When you face Upoket, remember, he fights to prove Zelthorian superiority. You fight to survive. Only one of those motivations requires victory. The other just requires lasting long enough." Alone in the facility, Lex ran through the sequences again, not thinking, just moving, trusting instinct over analysis. That underwater feeling grew stronger, not controllable, but present, waiting for genuine danger to call it forward. 2 rotations until the match. 48 hours until she discovered whether pattern recognition could beat 200 victories worth of combat experience. Somewhere in the station's depths, conspirators finalized their plans. Somewhere in the diplomatic quarters, Upoket prepared for another inevitable victory. And somewhere in the space between thought and action, Lex's brain calculated probabilities her conscious mind would never understand. The arena filled fast. Word had spread across 6 sectors. Human with impossible reflexes versus undefeated Zelthorian champion. Seats packed with species from across the station and beyond. Some came for entertainment. Others came to see if humans really could predict the future. Most came to watch someone either make history or die trying. Lex stood in the preparation chamber, checking her armor for the 3rd time. Standard combat gear. Nothing fancy. Kess appeared in the doorway, looking more nervous than she felt. "Medical teams are standing by," he said. "Though, if IMIX is right about the safety protocols..." "Don't think about it. I'm not thinking about it." "That's probably smart." Cass hesitated. "For what it's worth, your neurology suggests you can do this. Your brain is wired for exactly this kind of predictive processing." "My brain better be right, because the rest of me is terrified." Commander Otholin's voice boomed over the arena speakers, announcing the match in official terms that boiled down to human claims impossible ability, Zelthorian demands proof, fight settles argument. Diplomatic efficiency at its finest. The arena doors opened. Lex walked out to mixed reactions. Cheers from some humans in the crowd, silence from others, curious chittering and clicking from various species. Then Upoket entered from the opposite side. He was massive, taller than Kumal, broader, with crystalline plates that seemed to drink in light and turn it into menace. His forearms moved with casual precision that spoke of absolute confidence. 200 victories. 0 defeats. He looked at Lex the way someone might look at a routine obstacle. They met in the center. Otholin stood between them, whiskers twitching with bureaucratic importance. Combatants understand the rules. 6-minute engagement. First to yield or achieve incapacitation wins. Safety protocols are... He paused, checking his datapad with a frown. "Are active and monitored. Begin on my mark." Lex caught IMIX in the crowd. He shook his head slightly. The safety protocols weren't active. This was real. One mistake, and she wouldn't walk away. Kumal's words echoed, "You don't need to win. Just survive 6 minutes." Otholin stepped back. "Begin." Upoket moved like physics was optional. His opening strike came from 3 directions simultaneously, a technique that should have been impossible but absolutely wasn't. Lex's conscious mind registered shock. Her subconscious mind simply moved her body left and down. The strikes missed. Barely. Upoket's tertiary eyes widened fractionally. First surprise of the match. They circled. Lex kept her breathing steady, her mind quiet. Don't think. Don't analyze. Just move when the underwater feeling says, move. Upoket struck again, faster this time, testing her limits. Lex dodged, took a glancing hit to her shoulder that sent pain radiating down her arm. The blow would have shattered bone if it had landed clean. The crowd noise faded. Time seemed to stretch. That pre-awareness sensation grew stronger, like standing in surf and feeling the next wave building before it arrived. Upoket changed tactics, started mixing feints with real strikes, attacking from unexpected angles. Any normal opponent would have been overwhelmed. But Lex wasn't reacting to what she saw. She was responding to what was about to happen. Her body moved through probability spaces her conscious mind couldn't map. Dodge, counter, retreat. Dodge again. She wasn't winning, wasn't even close. But she wasn't losing either. Every strike that should have ended the match found empty air. Every combination that should have connected hit armor or missed entirely. 3 minutes gone. Upoket's movements grew frustrated. He increased speed, added complexity, started using techniques that required split-second reading of opponent responses. That's when Lex realized something. Upoket fought by reading his opponents, adapting to their patterns in real time. But she didn't have patterns. She had predictions. She wasn't reacting to him. She was reacting to probability itself. 4 minutes. The champion committed to a full offensive sequence, the kind that ended matches decisively. All 4 arms moving in synchronized devastation, creating a cage of strikes impossible to escape. Except Lex saw the shape of it forming before it started, felt the intent crystallizing into action, and moved into the one gap that existed, the one space his combination couldn't reach. She ended up behind him, perfectly positioned. Instead of attacking, she might have landed a strike. She simply stepped back. Upoket spun, confusion evident in his posture. How had she known? How had she found the gap? 5 minutes, 60 seconds left. Lex's heart hammered, arms ached, mind screamed for rest. But that underwater awareness held steady, guiding her through impossibility. Upoket charged. Not elegant, not tactical. Pure aggressive frustration. 200 victories had never required this much effort. Lex dodged, ducked, rolled, let him tire himself against probability. The arena clock hit 6 minutes. Chimes sounded. Match over. Otholin stepped forward, stunned. By time limit, victory to Lex. The arena erupted. Some species cheered. Others sat in shocked silence. A few looked genuinely frightened. Upoket stood motionless for a long moment. Then he approached Lex, all 4 arms spread, in a gesture she didn't recognize. "I do not understand what you did," he said quietly, "but it was honorably done." "You're a better fighter than me," Lex admitted. "I just knew where not to be." That is a terrifying advantage. But he inclined his head in respect. Imix pushed through the crowd, grinning. The conspiracy just fell apart. When you survived, they had to scramble to restore safety protocols before anyone noticed they were offline. Evidence trail is compromised but documented. Multiple arrests coming. Kess appeared next, scanner already out. "Your neural activity during that fight was extraordinary. Your brain was processing predictions across multiple simultaneous timelines." "Can we do the science later?" Lex interrupted. "I'd really like to sit down before I collapse." Kumal materialized from the crowd. "You trusted instinct over thought. Well done. I had a good teacher. You had adequate instruction. You provided exceptional implementation." His mandibles clicked with satisfaction. "I believe I would like to learn how to fight against someone who can predict my movements. That's going to take a while. I have time. Apparently, humans are more interesting than I realized." Days later, Kess published his findings. Humans possessed latent predictive processing abilities, evolutionary holdover from persistence hunting. Not psychic, not magical. Just pattern recognition evolved to extraordinary levels. Other species began to understand. Humans weren't superior, just different. Every species brought unique advantages to the galaxy. Humans happened to excel at seeing patterns in chaos. In the training facility, Lex sparred with Kumal. She dodged his strike half a second early. He smiled. Actually smiled. Again. They reset positions. Across Omega Crossing, 60 species trained together, learning from each other, building something new from their differences. And in that moment, the galaxy became a little bit smaller, a little bit less frightening, and a whole lot more interesting.